So welcome back to episode 5 of Together We Thrive, dedicated to inspiring and connecting social entrepreneurs. I'm Rachel from House of Eden Studio, and today we're going to be talking about pivoting or changing your business in past or present times. Now, it's important to mention that at the moment that we are actually videoing this, we in Australia are slowly relaxing some of our legislations around the lockdown in the COVID crisis, and it's important for us to also acknowledge that there are lots of other countries that are still currently in heavy lockdown and heavy crisis, and we will be discussing the COVID crisis today, but we also want to inspire and connect other people to understand that pivoting or changing your business is actually a part of continuous business growth. So joining me today, I have the innovative Irene from Millhouse Ventures, and welcome back, Irene. We also have the passionate and compassionate Helen from Spare Harvest and Kim from Ethne. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Rachel.
So I wanted to actually start with a little bit of backstory behind what actually brought me here to actually start doing these group interviews. I have a business called House of Eden Studio, and our vision statement is Together We Thrive, Leading Better Business. And I guess one of the major reasons why we're actually conducting these group interviews was because that we noticed that in a time of crisis, there was still lots of opportunity for people to connect in a different way. And so we thought that we would actually start these videos. And that's my personal story of something that I did to actually pivot or change during the COVID crisis. Now, coming back to our vision statement of Together We Thrive, Leading Better Business, let's start with our warm-up question. Irene, what does better business mean to you?
Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be back again. Thank you, Rachel. I'm wearing 2 hats today. So I have the Millhouse Ventures hat on, and we are a social enterprise intermediary, and we're all about educating and supporting social entrepreneurs who are trading for purpose. So for us, better business is quite literally using business and trade to have better outcomes in the world. The other hat that I wear is Magic Electricity Box. That is my own social enterprise. It's a music publishing social enterprise, and we make songs to change the world. And for me, that's very much around acknowledging the journey I've had as an artist, as a creative industries practitioner, and finding better ways of marrying this purposeful life with my income earning potential.
That's great. And how about you, Helen? What does better business mean to you?
So Spare Harvest is a social enterprise, and we play in that social and environmental impact space. And for me, better business is about a combination of purpose and doing good in the world, as well as finding some commercial strategies to allow you to be financially sustainable. So for me, it's better business is about sustainability, both social, environmental, and financial sustainability. So that triple bottom line is really important. People, planet, purpose, all of those sort of things are about actually better business. And business is just one part of the world's ecosystem. So we need to make sure we play fair with all the other ecosystems as well.
Absolutely. And how about you, Kim?
I guess from a big picture at the moment, with everything that's happening in the world, I guess we're all a little bit, and I know myself have been reflecting on the fragility of the capitalist system as it kind of exists at the moment. And there's been a lot of really beautiful things that have come out of this time, but also I think some of the scary parts of when business is purely profit-based, and that there's a lot of businesses out there at the moment that just aren't looking after their people in a time of crisis and need. And so I think better business, for me, from that bigger picture, is, like Helen mentioned, that it's actually about that triple bottom line, that businesses are building into their core DNA the focus on both people and planet and profit, but not letting profit be the thing that dominates over their care of their people and the care of people in their communities. So yeah, I guess that's from a big picture perspective, but I guess from me as an organisation with Ethne, it's really about empowering our young people and our young women specifically, and equipping them with the tools so that they can make change in their communities, because I truly believe that's, they're going to be our future leaders and change makers, to lead better business into the future.
Absolutely. I love what you said there about building it into the DNA of your business. I think it's absolutely vital, or it should be mandatory, in my opinion. So let's find out a little bit more about your businesses, and specifically about the topic today of pivoting or changing your business. We'll start with you, Irene.
Thank you.
So what does your business look like now, and how does it differ from when you first started?
So I'm going to focus on Magic Electricity Box, because that's the space where I've been hands-on with the pivot, and changing the way that we operate in the ecosystem, changing the way that we operate in the market. So when Magic Electricity Box first started, it was myself and the co-founder were the two, principal employees and business development people, and we ran the operations, we created the products, and we just kind of put stuff out there into this nebulous world called music industry. And we were quite privileged in our networks to secure grant funding, to secure ongoing project work. And then there was a shift in government in Australia, and the whole grants landscape changed. So there was less emphasis placed on community arts development, and more emphasis placed on small business, entrepreneurialism and innovation in more of a business sense. And that had a remarkable impact on the way that we were delivering services, and the way we even thought about the value that we were providing in our spaces. So we watched grants dry up, we watched work cancelled, we watched our funding partners all kind of look at their budgets and go, oh my God, we can't afford to do anything. And being a supplier in that space, it meant that we could no longer rely on those relationships or those opportunities. And for me, that was the lighthouse moment, where we saw the rocks, we saw the challenge that was coming for us. And I put on my big girl pants, and I thought, I need to find a different way of doing business here. And for me, that came back to, well, what value do I bring to entrepreneurialism? What value do I bring to the innovation space? How do I follow where the trends are going into that business world? And I was fortunate enough to find some incredible organisations and some incredible work happening in my industry, so still in the creative industry space. But it really focused on, here are these artists who understand business, and I saw myself as one of those people. So I built up my expertise and found my own work, so became a consultant and a freelance person, business advisor for creatives, basically, in that world. And that gave me enough confidence in my own abilities, plus a paycheck, to then take a break from Magic Electricity Box and figure out what comes next for that organisation. I spent about 2 years investigating the incubator and accelerator spaces that are available to any business. And I found it really, really difficult to find somebody who could speak my language with a creative industries company, until I came across social enterprise. And then the whole world basically opened up for me. And that was when I first discovered Millhouse, which is where I currently work, and it's the first hat that I'm wearing today. For me, the change that's happened for Magic Electricity Box from 20 years ago when we started to today, it's very much around a deeper understanding of our business model and how that sits directly into an impact narrative. And it was through a really fit for purpose, incredible program that I'm now the manager of, that I was able to completely radically change everything about my company. So every single element has changed in the past 6 months. And that was scary and horrible, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be around supportive people to help me actually on that journey. Because I think if I had to do it by myself, I would have cried and failed and closed. And none of those situations or scenarios were going to sit well with me. So that was my journey. So to answer the question quickly, every single thing has changed.
Wow. That sounds
it was a big wow. It was a massive wow.
Yeah, incredible. I have just so many questions. We could probably be here all day. But Helen, how about you? How has Spare Harvest changed from when you first started?
Not as dramatic as Irene's. Because we weren't connected to the business space and we weren't dependent on grants and outside influences. What changed for us was our community. So Spare Harvest was started because I had an excess of mandarins in my backyard that I ended up burying into the ground. And I wanted to find a way of actually sharing them with people outside of my network, because most of my network also were growing their own fruit and veg. And so I wanted to try and create a way of actually connecting with strangers. And yes, Facebook was available, but that's not the medium that I wanted to work with. You never build a business on someone else's platform for a start. And so Spare Harvest started off just as a marketplace for people to share what they were growing in their garden. So it started with homegrown produce. We probably had one major pivot, but we had lots of little pivots along the way. So it started off as homegrown produce, but I wanted it to be a really open platform for people to connect. The fundamental of a whole process is sense of connection, a sense of conversation about bringing community together, and using what we had spare in our gardens was a nice way of doing that to make sure it wasn't wasted. But by creating a very open marketplace, we started to see people who want to use it differently. We gave people the choice to share it, swap it, or sell it, because we didn't want to impact on people's value systems. Then people said, well, I want to try and find this. So then we had to create a wanted listing, and that came from our community. And then people said, well, I've got stuff in my pantry that I'm not using. Can I use it for that? And I said, yes, of course you can, And so each time we had some feedback from our members, our community, on how they wanted to use it, we quickly embedded those changes into the marketplace, and it started to grow. But what the major pivot for us was in 2018, when we realized a lot of people were saying, oh, Helen, you've only got 200 people in your community. And I said, well, actually, we've got probably 2,000 people signed up, but only 200 people are actively participating by creating listings, which is typical of any community, whether it's online or face-to-face. You'll have a lot of people who sit in the background, don't actively participate. And that was very obvious on our platform as well. And they said, well, how do I get in touch with those people? Because they're still my kind of people. I want to talk to them, even though they're not creating a listing. And that was our major pivot. In 2018, we turned Spare Harvest from being a marketplace, and we turned it into a community that had a marketplace. And so we completely rejigged it, and we are now a community of like-minded people. And so people can find each other on the community and connect directly without having to have created a listing. And the wonderful thing that's come from that is that we've seen people who are traveling interstate. We had an example of a member here on the Sunshine Coast went to Melbourne, and they didn't have a listing of anything they had spare, but they were in our community. They reached out to them and they caught up with them and had a coffee. So we were able to make that connection even though they didn't have anything spare. And so that was the major pivot for us, was to turn our marketplace really into a community. And one of the services we offer our community is a marketplace. And that's also allowed us now to actually look at what other products and services we'd like to create for our community based on what they want. So that complete swap over has allowed us to actually explore different ways that we can actually grow our community and provide products and services to our community.
Wow, it may not seem as much of a drastic change, but that's still a huge change to actually relook at the whole way that it's actually a community with a marketplace rather than you have a product that is a marketplace solution. So
and that came with a lot of technology changes too. So that was probably the biggest challenge, is actually take something off an existing platform that had 2,000 people on it and transfer them over to a new platform. And we did it all ourselves. Nick and I actually did it. So over a weekend, I got square eyes. And so it was about all of that development work, transferring it over, all the errors that came up and all the challenges we had with that and that change. But it was definitely worth it. We've seen some really lovely things come as a result of actually making that big pivot.
Absolutely. I know the feeling of that square eye scenario after having to transfer a few e-commerce websites from different platforms and things like that. It definitely needs a lot of fine details just to make sure that everything crosses over in the way that you want it.
Yeah.
How about you, Kim? Ethne?
Well, I guess what's kind of fascinating listening to both of your guys' stories is it kind of highlights, I think, the very multifaceted nature of social enterprise and the nonprofit sector, I think, because the number of kind of moving parts that can influence the way we pivot, from Irene with funding landscapes and partners, through to Helen with her community and what they've been asking. And for me, and my pivot has been a big part actually driven by my team and what they've wanted to do with the platform that kind of got created. So I started Ethne 2.5 years ago. I've been working in the refugee and migrant settlement sector with young people, and one of the biggest challenges that I saw for them was gaining, particularly for our young women, gaining meaningful training and employment pathways that were culturally appropriate and met their needs. And I guess I was struggling in working in the nonprofit space because we did a lot of kind of very shallow kind of one-off engagements, but we weren't doing that kind of long-term meaningful stuff that was really necessary to see young people kind of supported into employment into the long term. So I decided to leave my full-time role and start a social enterprise, basically basing it off a small business I used to have in New Zealand when I was at university, like 13 years ago, where I started off making jewellery and ended up doing these kids' birthday parties, making jewellery and things. And so I thought, I'll take something I know and I'll apply that, I guess in terms of social enterprise, I'll apply that business model I know and I'll apply it to the need that I see. And so essentially we created a organisation that provided cultural experiences for children and young people that were facilitated by young women from culturally diverse backgrounds. And the goal really was to be able to provide those young women a platform to share their stories and their culture with the community while gaining that really crucial training and employment experience. And so we've been kind of working on that over the last couple of years, and little shifts and changes and pivots, similar to you, Helen, along the way. It was, just kind of adapting to things as it happened. But this year really stopped and sat down with the team. I've got kind of a core team of 6 young women that work with me at the moment, and we really kind of sat down and went, well, what is the future of Ethne? We were struggling, I think, to actually get our services into the market, like just I think getting, it was really trying to target parents to engage with our parties and things like that, and really kind of struggling to get a bit of traction in that space. So we really had to kind of stop and think about what we were doing. At the start of last year, we had made a shift to being a non-profit, so a different I guess legal structure, and so I kind of stopped and sat down with the team, and I guess we've been really super lucky because we've actually had Rach and House of Eden providing us a mentoring program through this experience. And I guess COVID kind of happened at this really interesting time where we kind of said, yep, let's stop and reflect and review. And then COVID hit, and so it's given us extra time to stop and reflect and review. But I sat down with the team and I said, guys, what do you guys want from this? Because what I realized over the 2.5 years that we've been doing this was that we were actually, we weren't, the core impact we were having was not employment. That was like a nice side extra, and a lot of our young women gained amazing experience that got them other part and full-time jobs, but it wasn't actually the employment that the young woman wanted to that Ethnia was having the impact in. Because I had most of my team go on to these other jobs, and yet they still kept coming back and still kept staying engaged. And I kind of said to them, well, why is it that you're still here? You've got your job. I've done what I said I was going to do and help you get a job. And they said, well, it's because we feel like here's a place where we belong, and that we feel like we have a voice and that we feel heard. And that's where we sat down and said, okay, well, actually, this needs to become something much bigger than just an employment pathway. So this year's just been a really big process of reviewing that and working with the team, doing a lot of kind of needs analysis and consultation with other organisations. And really what it came back to was my team said that they hate doing kids' parties. And and where we began is not where we're going. And that was, I think they were very tentative. We're at team training and Rachel's there with us helping doing this. And, they said, well, what do we want to drop? What do we not want to do anymore? Rachel asked them, and they all kind of sat there quietly and trying to be polite. And I said, come on, guys, just be brutal. And they said, kids' parties. We hate kids' parties. And for them, that was because it felt shallow, that it was kind of, not a really strong way for them to share their culture. Working with the kids wasn't really so much their thing. And they came back saying, we really want to support other young women in our communities and give them the experience that we have here. And if we really are passionate about doing cultural awareness, but we want to do it in schools, and we want to do it with older, like young people, high schools and things, where we can actually get into some more purposeful conversations and really have a big impact, not just kind of, doing a little bit of African drumming and, having a little bit of fun. They really want to have deep conversations about, their journeys as refugees and asylum seekers, about their cross-cultural identities and things like that. So at this point we're now kind of heading in a new direction, really focusing on specifically just working with young women aged 12 to 25 with zero kids parties. And lots of, I guess, programs with schools and various things. And so it's been an exciting but fun journey, and I think it's been very much driven by my team now about where we go next and what they want from it.
Yeah, and what a fantastic team you have. I had obviously the pleasure of being part of that Clarity session, and they are just such inspiring young girls that are going to change the world. They are on a mission, and it's not doing them justice to be doing the kids' parties. And I think it's important to mention that while you were doing the kids' parties, you were also trialling lots of other things, like you said, the school programs and other like workshops and things like that too. And that's really where they were seeing that they had this like love and passion for something that was far greater.
Also where the needs of our customers were, ultimately we do want to be a social enterprise. We are set up as a non-profit, and we do work with grants, and I'm sure that might be the same for you, Irene, as well, where you kind of have a mixed funding model. But ultimately we still want to be as much as possible a sustainable organisation, and grants just being a supplementary income stream. So we looked at what was actually the needs in terms of a user pay, in terms of doing user pays programs and having, an income model. The parents weren't so engaging with the kids' parties. They had their princess pamper parties and their bouncy castles and all of things like that. And it was the schools that were coming to us saying, what you're offering is really unique and we really want to work with you on it. So that's how we kind of made that shift in terms of who was actually our target audience for those user pays services.
Yeah, absolutely. And
sorry, Irene was going to say something, right?
Oh, sorry.
There's something quite profound in the way that your team really influenced the changes that you were making, Kim, and that kind of crosses over into that space where the people that are part of your social enterprise are also beneficiaries and also almost customers or clients of that mission work as well. And that for me, I see that so often in that Millhouse space. It's like these are the people who have that deep knowledge, and just having a leader who can kind of put the question to them and draw out, there's a change that needs to happen here. What do you want that to look like? It's so incredibly empowering. It's such a beautiful process to be a part of. So it's much nicer than just government telling you there's no more money. I'd much rather pivot the way you have.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it hasn't been without its financial challenges like yours as well. But no, I agree with you too. And I think when we're talking about better business, you know, particularly when it comes to addressing needs in our communities, that that shouldn't be driven by, you know, the typical charitable model has always been driven kind of in a patriarchal way, and that's not, you know, that's proven not to address any issues. And I think that doing better business is actually people wanting to make changes in their communities being equipped with the tools and feeling empowered to do that for themselves. And the role we can play is providing them a platform to do so, and that upskilling and support, I think, in the process. And that's what Ethny is for me anyway, is really it's just become a platform for my young women to have a voice, and then equipping them with the skills so that they can take those interests and passions and actually create something from it.
Absolutely. That's a real, that matriarchal space, that's a real gift that I've been able to really identify in my own way that I want to see change. For me, you know, I'm a privileged white woman, so I see my function or my purpose as a human being on the planet is very much around opening the door for people who, women in particular, women and girls, who don't have that same support or that same kind of privilege that I have to actually get in there and have a say. Because that patriarchal model is very much around, he's the alpha male and he gets to make all the choices, fighting dinosaurs. But for the rest of society, you need that equality, that gender balance, and making sure that those young people have the space and safety and psychological safety to address change. Like, the ideas that my young guys come up with are 10 times as more interesting as anything I could actually develop. So
yeah,
you do yourself a favour by giving them a space to create change or to, you know, enhance that change journey.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's a fascinating time, I think, particularly. Sorry, Rach, we're totally getting off topic. Please interrupt.
It's meant to be a discussion, so continue. Dictatorship.
It's such a fascinating time at the moment too, because we look at the you know, leaders' responses to COVID across the world, and those who have done well are, well, you know, there's predominantly a lot of women in that category, you know, female leaders in countries who have done an amazing job because they have put people over profit. They haven't prioritized the economy, they've prioritized their people. And I truly believe that, I'm similar to you in being quite passionate about young female leaders. And I do believe that they bring, well, you know, for me, particularly my young women from refugee and migrant and asylum seeker backgrounds, they bring this unique combination of resilience and courage and bravery, with combined with empathy and care and nurturing. I think those two, that combination together, is incredibly powerful for the change that we need to see for better business into the future.
Absolutely. In fact, on our first interview, which Irene was also a part of, that we were actually talking about the synchronicities between personal and business growth, but I actually think that there are actually a lot of synchronicities between the topic of conversation that we're having today and the topic of conversation that we had there. One of the things that you did mention, Irene, was that you actually also developed a business model that would work without you necessarily working in it. And I think that that's also an important thing to bring into this conversation that we're having on the subject.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. That was a key criteria for our picture of success when it came to the pivot space. I'm a mother with 5 children. I'm a partner. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm an employee. I'm a change maker, and quite frankly, I'm exhausted. So the idea of building a business that had to have me at the center of it, and all of that energy and all of that intention, I kind of looked at that and I just thought, no, I'm going to burn out if I try and build that type of business again. So for me, it was very much around, well, what are the existing models of business? How can I innovate and stay true to the purpose and the mission work that we want to do, and yet build this sustainable, viable organization that doesn't need my blood, sweat and tears to operate, to deliver services into the market? And, you know, it's tempting to think about some of those cliches like the turnkey organization or franchising and all that sort of business. But for me, those are, they're models that have their place and they work for certain types of businesses. My intention was to have, as part of my sustainability picture, what would this business look like if any person could step in and be the managing director? And that made me look at really hard questions like, what's the payroll? Where does the money come from to train my young people coming up through the organisation so we can succession plan? What actually needs to happen in the processes and the ways that this organisation is organised so that I can be one step removed, build this pivoting organisation so that in the future when we have to pivot again, which we will, everybody's kind of seeing now, particularly in regional New South Wales or regional Australia, change is happening radically and quickly and faster than it's ever happened before. So we're going to have another pivot and it's going to happen a lot quicker than we were expecting. So how do I build that into the sustainability of our organisation? And for me, it comes down to really just being transparent with communication and documenting everything. So everything from how I make decisions to what ingredients are involved in putting together a standard operating procedures manual, or how I, look at the market, how I analyse trends. I'm recording all of that process, and that just becomes the kind of Bible of our organisation. And to me, if I hadn't have found the right support to pivot and understand the choices that were before me, all of that corporate knowledge would still be sitting, up here in my brain. And that's not going to help my organisation or the impact work that we need to do. So it came back to the space of impact first, impact at the middle of everything, impact and the matriarchal structure to take care of myself, take care of my team, and then take care of the world and the planet and everything else that happens around it. So it's possibly a bit selfish, but I'm okay with being a little selfish now. I'm old enough to just go, I've given myself away, so it's time for me to claim a bit of space back for myself.
Absolutely. And that impact first model still allows you to be able to do it and create opportunities for other people.
Absolutely. I think the core of social enterprise is very much, it has to be impact driven. It has to be impact first. Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point? I'm not sure if Helen and Kim feel the same way, but for me, if I'm not creating impact, then why am I even in business?
And it's also, it shouldn't be an either or with your well-being and your impact. And I think this is a problem, particularly for us in social enterprise world, where we feel like there has to be this piece of us that gets lost to do what we do. And I can relate. I went through a really severe period of burnout last year after many years of just going too much and just giving myself all to it, and I think it actually leads to you not being able to have the impact and that you want to have. So I really respect what you said, and I think we need to take the word selfish out of it, as if it's something wrong for us to expect that we should be able to have balance and well-being and health in our lives, and still do impactful work. And I think that's, I battle a lot with that word selfishness as well, but I think it's a word we actually need to remove. And I think that's called just intelligence.
Yeah. I have a lot of conversations with social enterprises, and every single time I say to them, the social enterprise doesn't exist unless you exist and you look after yourself. But I have a lot of conversations with a lot of mothers. And I say to them that your first social enterprise are your children, because they're the ones that are going to go out in the world and actually make an impact. So if you do nothing else, invest in your children and teach them how to be a good citizen in the world with compassion, empathy, kindness, and all those sort of things, problem solve, all of those sort of things. If you do that with your children, then you've made an impact in the world. You don't need to do anything more. But if you choose to do more and create a social enterprise, a business, so to speak, don't lose focus that your children are your first social enterprise.
Absolutely. And Irene mentioned about obviously the personal thoughts that she had that created that change in her business. Did you have any specific events or any specific aha moments that helped you when you were making your changes or pivots?
My kids come first. My family comes first. End of story. And everything works around that. So when Spare Harvest was created, I wanted it to be completely flexible, completely agile, to be responsive around my family. So, and that's exactly what I've created. So it goes back to intent. And when my children leave and move out of the house and don't need me as much physically or emotionally, and they go into the wide world, I can invest more time in Spare Harvest. But my focus has been on my children, and just them watching me develop Spare Harvest and watch my journey, I've made an impact. They are different people because of what I've done. So my success is basically tied to my family and my children and what they will go out and do in the world, and the decisions they make, and how good citizens they are at the school, and the great feedback I get from their community of how they are really kind and compassionate and empathetic and responsible and things like that. So I'm a success. Spare Harvest is a success before that. And if I get any more of an impact out there and I reduce waste and I create more social connections in the community, that's an absolute win. But yeah, it was intent right at the beginning that my family come first.
And I think it's really interesting what you've kind of both highlighted there. And I think that maybe people don't do enough when they first start their journeys, is actually sitting down and going, what is it that I want from this?
Yes.
Is it, do I want flexibility or autonomy, or to be a mum, or to, or what is it exactly that I want of this? And therefore, how am I going to, like Irene said, build a business model that caters for both the impact I want to have, but also my needs in this journey. Because I think we all sit and we start and go, what is the impact I'm going to have? And how am I going to put all my blood, sweat and tears and savings and time and everything and mental sanity into this? And it's always about the impact first. And I think that's fantastic. But once you've been on that journey for a while and you realize it's actually completely unsustainable, and I did the same thing at the start of this year, is kind of sitting down and going, well, what do I want the future of Ethne to look like for me? What do I value the most? And therefore, same as you, Irene, is going, I want to build myself out of this business. So that's sustainable, and it's always been for me, it's always been a purpose of leaving a legacy for my young woman. But that comes with actually starting first and foremost going, well, what does that actually look like, and how do we keep coming back to that just as much as we keep coming back to our impact?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to acknowledge and set boundaries, to make sure that you acknowledge what your values are, and they are succinct within your personal and business life, and then creating those boundaries to make sure that you can do the best job possible. I think obviously a
little bit too, Rach, haven't you, from knowing you for a while, and that you've made some big pivots in House of Eden, where money's been offered to do work that just hasn't aligned with your values, and you've made active choices over your purpose, and stayed aligned with that. And that's been quite a big shift for you in the last six months or so.
Absolutely. I did a lot of work on my values, because I do believe values can change, and I really came back to the three things that I value the most is love. So love, like Helen, family and close friends, and then the second was peace. And so it wasn't just working with people that provided peaceful solutions, like people that thought outside the box in terms of equality or sustainability, but it was also personally for peace of mind, peace of quiet. It was just that was just a word that really helped embody everything that I really believe in. And then the final one was growth for me, was because I love to continue to develop myself, and continue to grow and learn, and travel is a big part of also the growth from a personal perspective. But then also I then looked at exactly what those three values, what I could do to do that within my business and create a vision. that was far bigger than me, but helped me just totally feel at ease with everything that I did. And whenever I get a new inquiry or something, I will always look back to those values. And if they don't work with me, I don't just say, no, that's not for me. I will find a solution. I'll find someone that I can offer the opportunity to instead. Yeah. How about you? What are your values?
Oh, I got to speak about these in the previous topic as well. So for me, my values are very much around that ancient knowledge and learning from cultures and learning from people and heritage journeys that, I've just figured this stuff out and I've known it for 85,000 years. So for me, that ancient knowledge and being able to work in a space where diversity and humanity is on this continual journey, bringing that into my world, into my business, into my life in every step of the possible way that I can. One of my other key values is about being cheeky and being fun. Like if I can't be cheeky and fun, if I don't have that safety around me, then it makes the challenge of change and the challenge of pivot that much harder. Like if it's not fun, if you can't be a bit cheeky and a bit saucy about it, then go away. So I guess they're my two key values that I always come back to every single time. Because I'm an artist, I've always gone through that space of scarcity around income. And one of the things that, I had to train myself out of was saying yes to everything. But I think that's part of the wisdom journey. I think there is a point in your life cycle of your business or a life cycle of your own sense of who you are in the world where you just have to say yes to everything. And then you get to a point where that wisdom and those experiences give you enough evidence and enough data to figure out what to say no to and where to protect yourself and have those boundaries. But, as I said before, I'm a privileged white person, so the opportunities that came to me were usually fairly good ones anyway. So in the work that I do with at-risk young people, we talk about the shark cage and learning from those ancient knowledge sources about, what kind of elements of the cage you need to put in place first so that you can be happy and healthy as a person. As far as business goes, just figuring out your purpose and what you want your impact to be, that usually gives us the true north to then figure out what parts you need to change. And it could be something as simple as, changing your marketing language, or it could be something as profound as changing what you sell in the marketplace. But to me, I always go back to those values. Who's done it before? What did they learn? And how do I instill that ancient knowledge into my day-to-day life? And then can I be a bit cheeky and fun with it?
I love that. And Helen, you obviously, your number one value is family. What other values have you instilled into your family?
So family, it comes under probably a wider value. It's called connection. So whether it's connection to my family, connection to the land, I grow a lot of our food and we use everything on our land in a circular process. So it's a connection to earth, it's a connection to my community, all of those. So family sits under that value of a sense of connection. The other one is choice. I think it's really important we have choice because choice gives us power. When we don't feel like we have choices, we get disempowered. And that's come through in Spare Harvest by giving people the choice of how they want to use the platform. And the other one is just well-being for the planet, making sure we're making good decisions for our own well-being, for my family's well-being, for our security well-being, our financial security well-being, all of those sort of things around the planet's well-being, making good choices for the planet and things like that. So they'd be mine: connection, choice and well-being.
I love that. And how about you, Kim?
I've been working so much on my values for ethne at the moment, and it's interesting because I was sitting here thinking about this after you just asked that question, and I realised that the values that I guess I'm wanting to instill in the organisation actually probably relate entirely to the values of my own values, and those were courage, compassion and connection. And for me, the courage is, I guess, that the strength and the bravery just to continue to take chances and have adventures, and I guess roll with the learnings that come with that. I guess the courage to speak up, to be different, to live life a little differently. The compassion was both the compassion and empathy for others, but also the self-compassion, which I think is a really big journey that we go on as women, is learning how to value ourselves and I guess have the self-love, as much as that's thrown around a lot. But yeah, that compassion for yourself, to accept your burnout, to accept the times of change, to accept you can't do everything. So yeah, compassion kind of extends both to others and yourself. And then the last one being connection. And I agree 100% with you, Helen, that I'm just a big old extrovert. And so the connection that I have with family, with friends, with community is massively important to me. And so I think that connection and that sense of belonging is a massive part of who I am, and therefore what I want my organisation to be as well.
I love that element. Sorry, Rachel. I love that element of compassion and that recognition through the burnout experience of I can't do everything. I think I've had a similar kind of moment in my own personal journey as a woman and as a businesswoman, where I had all 5 kids at home and my husband was working full time, doing crazy hours, and I just came home and the house was a mess. And I just looked at the door and I thought, no, I'm not a maid. I actually can't do everything. I'm not going to do any of this housework. And I think that's the day that I actually stopped. I stopped vacuuming. I stopped doing everybody else's laundry. I stopped cleaning the kitchen. And it took a good 12 months for my kids to kind of look around the house and just go, oh, this place is gross. Let's clean it.
Yeah.
And that 12 months was awful. But that for me was like a real line in the sand of how much I'm prepared to actually do.
Yeah.
And it was awful and uncomfortable, but eventually the rest of the world will catch up. So that was a bonus. I did have those despairing moments just thinking, I can't do everything and so much needs to be done. How committed am I to this journey? But in the long run, it's made them a little bit more responsible for what kind of work they have in the world and what kind of impact they have just around basic cleanliness. God love them. It was nice picking up the vacuum for 12 months though. That was fun.
And it takes real courage to draw that line. I think that's a real battle. And I mean, that's the same. We're meant to be talking about pivoting, but I guess that's the same with pivoting. Is it takes real courage just to kind of to really stop and go, I can't continue with business as usual, whether that's for yourself personally or for your business, and to draw a line and say something's got to change, and I'm prepared to deal with the fallout of that decision because I value myself.
Absolutely, and I think Irene actually answered the question that I was going to ask before I even asked it, because it was actually about was there any personal development or any things that you had to do personally to make those changes happen? Irene, do you have anything else to add to that topic of conversation? Because I think it's a really important one to have. Like, just those simple little things can actually really make changes within yourself, and which just flows on to your business.
Absolutely. I can be quite flippant about the role of women in business or parents in business in particular, but for me, that personal journey is such a key part of entering into the entrepreneurial space and recognizing key strengths within yourself. I've spoken about Michael Gerber before and the way that he identifies that E-myth space, and recognizing that it's not all, lone wolf, multi-million dollar 10 times return kind of space. There are actually degrees of success within this world, and you can paint your own picture for it. There was something that Kim said about that courage to change that I would like to address, but I think before I go too much further into that, maybe Helen and Kim have got some more comments they'd like to make around the personal journey.
Spare Harvest has been a personal journey. They're completely interlinked for me. So before I started Spare Harvest, I was full-time parent for, well, it was Alicia, 10 plus years. So like you, Irene, I was in a corporate career, met my husband, he worked away a lot. And I just couldn't give what I wanted to give to the kids and still work 60 hours a week. And so we made the decision that I would stop. And that was an incredibly hard decision. That's to give up income, position, connections, all of that sort of stuff was an incredibly hard decision. It's a grieving process, but I managed to actually stay in that grieving process and come out the other end of it. A lot of parents, mothers, don't take the time to go through that grieving process, and they cut it short and they go back to work. I was lucky enough to actually have the time to actually do that. So I was full-time parenting before I started Spare Harvest, and then I knew Spare Harvest had to be a technology solution. I left corporate before there was even social media. Like I wasn't even on Facebook at the time when I thought about starting Spare Harvest. So I have no technology skills at all. I'm still learning. That's probably that. Forget Sudoku. I just do technology. That's the way to keep my brain cells nimble. And so I had to develop my personal skills around technology and learn all that. I had to go out and create new networks and meet people again after being parenting full time. And so Spare Harvest has been a personal development journey. And as I've said to people, if I close Spare Harvest, it was a success because I invested in my personal development through this whole process. I've grown as a person. That growth has had an impact on my children. It's had an impact on every single person that's come into my world while I've been doing it. So for me, they are completely interlinked. They are one and the same.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I can agree more, Helen. I think with that, that people, I think, if you haven't been on a journey like this, you just can't quite comprehend that. It's not a business journey. It's the biggest personal development journey of your life, because it teaches you that there's no hiding. You know, there's no management above you or people below you or job titles or anything like that prevent you from the hurdles that you'll face, the things you have to overcome, the ability to dig deep in really challenging times, that the ability to persevere and persist. Yep. And is one of the biggest things I think that I've learned through this. And accept, you know, I've been a massive perfectionist in my life. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but I think that going on this journey was a big process of dismantling years of perfectionism and accepting that I'll put things out into the world that aren't perfect, and I have to let that go and move forward. And you know, might lose some stuff, you know, to sit there and have the whole basis of my business pulled apart by my team and reimagined and refocused and things is it's a real, I guess, a process of letting that ego go and becoming, I guess, I think the best version of myself in this process, for sure.
Yep.
That's beautiful. And Irene, you wanted to add in some extra things.
The best version of myself is the version that doesn't need to vacuum. For me, Kim, what you were talking about with that courage to change and going back up to that, you know, tying the circle back up to that leadership space and the matriarchal model. There's a lot of pressure on the Australian economy now around let's everybody go back to business. Let's everybody go back to business as it was before. Let's try and recreate, you know, the world before Corona and just get in there and just open it all up and start again. And what I'm seeing from our social enterprise sector, and certainly from the conversations I've been having with the social entrepreneurs who are connected to Millhouse, is that we're really courageous and we really are imagining a completely different picture of the economy and all of the energy that's coming around that grassroots moment. And a lot of them are, you know, they're incredibly scared, but they're stepping into that space with a whole new understanding of what it takes to be courageous. And even as something as simple as jumping back onto public transport, you know, there's a few entrepreneurs I've been working with around, I can't actually get into the office. I really want to come and be with my team. We'll do the social distancing, but nobody wants to get on the bus. So even micro moments like that, I'm just like, yeah, everything that we're rebuilding here is a courageous moment but it's happening at grassroots. And in my most adventurous moments, thinking about, what would that leadership model look like in the political space around the economy and around government intervention in trade and in the economic spaces, if the leaders, we're looking at this as an opportunity to completely radically change everything.
What would that be, eh? I think I've seen that, exactly what you're talking about. It's been one of the exciting things I've seen, I think, with you, Rach, in the last little while, is that you've been incredibly courageous in making decisions. Even just this program that you're doing at the moment, bringing people together in this way and investing a huge amount of your time and resources just to create a platform that really creates that kind of change and conversation for that change, which has led to no income for you, but something that's been really purposeful. I think it's these moments where people are really stepping out and going, I'm going to do this. And it's not about me, but it's about just being courageous for change.
Oh, thank you for that acknowledgement. I have enjoyed every moment of this and all the other conversations that we've had, because it has just been fantastic. Actually, I like getting to know everyone on a deeper level and having those conversations that if we were to have met at a networking event or something like that, we wouldn't have got down into some of these nitty-gritty topics, or like, how are you feeling personally compared to your, like, and how's your business doing, and like, how is that linked, and like actually getting into these really like deep, meaningful conversations. And the thing I love is that there have just been so many synchronicities across every single conversation that we've had, and that's when you really know that you've kind of like found your people. And so it's just been fantastic for me. But moving on, so more recently, obviously, we've had to deal with the COVID crisis, and some people pivoted, some people decided to pause. I guess it would be great to know what did you have to do, and what can we expect for your business going into the future?
Well, Magic Electricity Box hasn't really pivoted during the coronavirus pandemic and the COVID-19 challenges. But we did that massive pivot journey before all of that space so that business model process, that acceleration process, that's still playing out. What it means for our future is that we're doubling down on our e-commerce strategy, and then watching to see what happens in our ecosystem, because we will need new partners for the impact work. A lot of the partners that were working with have shut their doors. So just seeing what's coming out of the other side of the pandemic. For Millhouse, we've had a substantial pivot in the way that we deliver services, using technology, using access, going to virtual delivery, but still maintaining the personality, the value proposition, the purpose for why Millhouse exists has really formed the journey of our pivot. We were also in the position that we were already looking at these topics as a way of growing. Millhouse is 4 years old, going into our 5th year. And for the life cycle of a business, we're basically just getting out of the startup stages. So the innovation that happened because of COVID-19 was very much just accelerating a process that was already happening. And for the future, what I'm seeing from my program is the expansion of our connection to regional entrepreneurs. Being a Canberra-located accelerator program, a lot of the footprint of people we were able to work with kind of came from our region. Now I'm getting inquiries from, social entrepreneurs in Los Angeles, in New Zealand, in pick a place. There's been an inquiry about what we do and how we can help. So that's really shown me that in this journey of pivoting because of the pandemic, we actually belong to a group. And that's what gives me hope that grassroots energy and the way that we kind of harness that energy is going to make a phenomenal difference to where we sit in the future. So for us, there's sides of our business that have had to be pulled back and are winding down, but the core purpose of why we exist is scaling and growing, which is, that's a good thing. It means I have a job.
That's so exciting. That's fantastic to know that obviously that it just accelerated something that you were doing already, but in the meantime, because everyone has maybe had the time to be doing more research and things like that, and in line with the fact that you've put more onto the web so people can see what's going on, and then you're actually starting to reach people all over the world. So that's fantastic. How about you? It's massive. How about you, Helen?
COVID hasn't really changed much for me. Even on a personal level, we bunker down sometimes on the weekend as a family, and car doesn't even leave the garage, so and we're just using more time to get back into the garden and growing more food and things like that. From a Spare Harvest point of view, it's gone a little bit quieter because people are worried about the socialisation and not allowed to leave their homes and all that sort of stuff. But I think as we come out of that, I think Spare Harvest will start to pick up again. It will start to gain a bit more traction because it really is at the ethos of what we need as we come out of COVID-19. It's a sense of connection to our community. It's about actually putting less into landfill. It's about growing more of our own food. I mean, seed companies completely sold out in the first 2 weeks of April. Like, you couldn't get a seed for love for money anywhere in Australia. So people have started to want to grow some of their own food. They're looking for more secure ways. And I think Spare Harvest, as we come out of this and more people get to know who we are and what we do, it'll start to grow because COVID's been a bit of a scare for a lot of people in the way they've been living, and they want to live in a different way. And Spare Harvest is just a tool that they could use to live in a different way going forward.
I love that. Yeah, I think there's going to be a probably a massive surge of people that want to connect with the community in any way or shape or form that they know how. And so, I think.
Well, I mean, COVID's been really interesting because it's actually really showing the cracks of our current community systems. It's really opened them up. Like, our food charity system is broken. It is absolutely smashed broken. Coles and Woolworths donate food because they write it off, and that makes them look good. It's a wonderful stock management and marketing campaign, but they haven't had anything to give away to our food charities for the last couple of weeks. So our food charities have been short of stock. They rely completely on volunteers, and volunteers have been at home. They haven't been able to go out. So we have people who are already food insecure not being able to access current systems, and now we've got more people who are even more food insecure. So what it's demonstrated is that the systems we've put in place, the charitable systems that disempower people, have to be broken down, and we have to rebuild them again in a more sustainable, more resilient, and a more community focus. So it's been interesting times. So hopefully the shake up, we will do business better.
Absolutely. And I even actually put, like you said, the Coles and the Woolies to the test, because they thought that they were these people that could constantly supply everything, and we all saw with the toilet paper crisis and everything else that they actually have their limitations too. And so if you think about it, if more people knew about Spare Harvest and they said, I've got some spare toilet paper, they could share with their community.
Exactly. We've got to come back to a system where we actually, I'm coining the term community sufficiency. The best way that all of us can be self-sufficient is we invest in community sufficiency. And that ensures that we are inclusive, because in any community there will be people who will be always vulnerable. Kim, like your refugees and some of those young people and things like that, they will go through a period in their lives where they're vulnerable, food insecure, mental health. The ones that aren't, we need to step up as a community and support them so they come out the other end and they become more secure, so that they're available to help other people when they get their moments of insecurity and challenges in their life. So we've got to come back together as a community. We've got to stop relying on long supply chains that come from the other side of the world. Where we used to just ordering something off Amazon and expecting it to deliver in a week. Well, at the moment, you're waiting 3 or 4 months because there's no planes in the air to bring stuff here. You know, so we've got to look at more local supply chains around everything, you know, not just only our food, but food is really, it's a basic basic necessity of life. I mean, homeless people don't have a roof over their head, but they need food every single day, you know. So we've got to really look at all of our systems that we've built up in this capitalist society and break them down and rebuild them in a more sustainable and community sufficiency way.
Absolutely, and take people out of that thought pattern of scarcity and realise that there really is an abundance if we are all willing to share. And
correct.
Yes, Fair Harvest is a perfect example of the way that you can bring the communities together to help everyone. How about you, Kim? How did COVID change things for Ethne, and what do we expect to see moving forward for you?
Oh, well, I just want to, I guess I just want to kind of agree with Helen that this is, this is such a great chance for us to rethink living locally. I think that's so exciting. And I think it's exciting that you've built a really resilient platform that has been able to kind of continue to survive during this time, because I think that's really demonstrated what's possible. You know, where so many businesses are either failing or closing or pivoting and things, you've built this really resilient organisation that's continuing to serve a need that's incredibly important. So that's,
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, it's a good news story, because I think there's so many stories, as miners and things that is kind of been like, oh crap, we're going to do things differently. Well, I guess with Ethne, it was interesting. Like I said at the start, COVID's come at a time where we were kind of putting pause on anyway to do our kind of reflecting and reimagining of our future. So it hasn't been kind of, we weren't kind of full steam ahead at the time it happened. So it's actually given us even more space, particularly for me. I run another social enterprise that I'm just in the process of transitioning out of. I worked a part-time job. I worked crazy weeks, and I needed this pause to really be able to give Ethne the time and headspace it deserved to be able to move forward. And I kind of found myself, in a bit of a rush heading back to New Zealand as they closed their borders, and I lost my part-time job. So this has given me a big point of reflection. And I think with Ethne, we are looking at doing some online stuff, because we are particularly concerned about our young women being isolated, particularly those maybe in domestic violence situations, being at home with, isolated with family and so forth. And just general isolation has been a real challenge. So we are looking at trying to jump online and do some online stuff. However, for me, the power of connection still comes from face-to-face engagement. And I think our young people more and more these days need face-to-face engagement because they live their lives digitally. So, yes, we are kind of looking at what we can kind of do at the moment, but more importantly, still looking into the future is how do we build a bit of an online community and an empowering online community, but most importantly, how do we build that face-to-face community? Like Helen was saying, it's about coming back to local and knowing your neighbours and knowing young people, having friends in the community and things like that. So, so that's really where we'll be doing little bits and bobs online, but most importantly, we'll be coming back to our core purpose in due course as it permits. Just trying to, I guess our big goal for this year is going to be reconnecting. What we're working with Rachel on is how do we kind of reconnect that community of young women, specifically in Logan, in Queensland, and doing that both online and then face to face.
Absolutely, and I think the idea of actually just utilising the online space to be able to connect, to then get more people to join you in those face-to-face conversations. Very, very similar to Helen's model, is that it's an online platform because that's where people are, but that drives them to then have those beautiful connections with their local communities and a safe space to be able to talk freely. I think what you do is just beautiful. So we're coming towards the end of the topic of conversation, but do you have any advice that you could give to those that are like thinking about pivoting their business, or they don't really know where to start? What advice would you give, Irene?
There's a couple of resources that I'd like to mention. So on YouTube, if you search for the Miller Centre channel, there's some incredible pivoting resources there. They're in the form of lectures or presentations. And they really help helped me to get my head around, well, what is a pivot? How do you actually approach pivoting in a systematic way? And of course, if I can just do a quick plug for Millhouse, come to Millhouse Ventures. We've got this incredible accelerator program, which was my magic electricity box pivoting process. I realized that I couldn't pivot by myself. I needed to have a sounding board, I needed to have mentorship, and I needed a program to actually guide me through all of the changes that happened. If you're looking at wholesale pivoting, if you're looking at kind of a whole systemic change, those types of programs, that kind of access to support, yeah, come and check out the Millhouse Ventures space. We'd love to see you. Thanks for the plug, Rachel.
How about you, Helen? Do you have any advice?
Anyone starting out a social enterprise is connected to purpose. They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. So my advice would be, in any good times, bad times, any decision making, any opportunities that come across your desk, go back to your intent. Right at the beginning. What do you want? Like, I spend a lot of time with my kids at the moment saying, what do you want? Because they come to me all the time telling me what they don't want, which we do as humans. We come with what we don't want. I don't want this, I don't want that. We need to focus on what we want. So go back to your intent and use those values or the purpose that you had in mind, why you wanted to start this, what you wanted to achieve, all those intentions. Go back to them every single time that something comes across your desk, and make sure they align. Like, I've had a few accelerators overseas, especially Europe, because they're really big around that circular economy, which is the space I play in, and sharing economy and things like that. And they're way ahead of us. And I have a lot of accelerators reach out and say, Helen, we'd love for you to join us. I'm like, no, not going. I'm mine about the well-being of the planet. I'm not jumping on a plane. I'm about my connection to my kids, and I'm not leaving them for 4 months for a couple of 100,000 for an accelerator and lots of smart people. It doesn't work for me. So use your intent, your value systems to come back to everything. It's your foundation. It's absolutely the foundation of your house. Your social enterprise is built on a foundation, and if you start to put cracks into that foundation, it will fall. And I think we've noticed that not only in social enterprises during COVID, but enterprises in general, businesses in general, if their foundations were rocky, they're rocking it really hard at the moment. So go back to your intent and make sure your foundations are really solid.
I absolutely love that. I think it's so crucial, and particularly for social entrepreneurs, like you said, because I think that there's also we are people that want to change the world, and we want to make a difference, and we do almost want to help everyone, but sometimes helping everyone doesn't look after yourself and look after your vision and your mission. And so it is really important to consistently look back at what you're doing. And absolutely, as time goes on, things in your business can change. Your mission might change as you grow and expand. It might just get greater and greater, but there's still a change. But just always coming back to those core values and that core mission and the reason why you're doing what you're doing is so vital. Whether your business is at the highest of its success or the lowest, because there will always be those ebbs and flows in the business.
Exactly, and I'm a big believer the universe will keep questioning you about what you want. She'll present you opportunities that you would never even consider, and you're like, oh my God, that sounds like a great opportunity. And you can get distracted by those opportunities and take you away from where your intent and your purpose is. So by being very clear about what you want, you won't get distracted and go down rabbit holes and then realize, that shiny thing dangling in front of me, I thought that might be the key to my business, and I go down there and realize, oh my God, the people I'm dealing with, and what have I got myself into, and all those sort of opportunities. So I do believe the universe tests us both personally and professionally regularly about presenting opportunities for us to just check in with what do we want.
Absolutely. How about you, Kim?
Oh, I think Irene and Helen have made some really great points I was going to touch on as well, which is coming back to your purpose. I think is really critical, and then also what Irene touched on, which was about surrounding yourself with good resources and support. I'll shamelessly shout out to Rach at this point as well, and I think the other thing I thought I might just touch on as well. I've talked a little bit about courage, but I think it's about being brave to hit the pause. And to not feel like you have to keep going, you're not on a mouse wheel and you don't have to keep running, and that there's no shame in pausing and putting things on hold to do that pivot and spend the time doing it well. And one thing a friend had once said to me, which I've just carried on because I love it, is let your no protect your yes. So decide what your yes is and then say the no's that you need to say. If that's no, I'm not going to continue business as usual right now, or no, I'm not going to take on that big project or funding because it's money or whatever it is, like it's okay to say no, and that can strengthen the yes that you'll say later. So when you're looking at the pivots, actually giving yourself enough time and headspace to do it well, rather than trying to do it while you're still going, a million miles an hour. You're just never going to give it what it deserves. So that would be my recommendation.
Love that.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things of like, if you know that you have a really close friend, if you just need to say, sorry, can't catch up, or sorry, I can't answer the phone, and know that they're not going to be worried on the other end, is kind of comes back to the same as if it's a really good business opportunity, they will totally understand why you are pausing, and they understand that they are waiting because there's actually going to be a better solution at the other side of it. And so I think as you said, it is really important to say no if it doesn't feel right with you right now, even if it is a potentially very exciting opportunity. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Definitely one of the things that I was going to add in was that trust your gut. I think your gut instinct is just so vital. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. Don't feel that you have to consistently push. If something doesn't feel right in your gut, maybe that is the time to be starting to ask, is there something that I need to change? Is there any other advice that we have before we close up?
Ditch the vacuum cleaner.
I love that one. Okay, so we will finish with a quick fire round. Irene, I'll start with you and I'll ask you a few questions, and then I'll go on to Helen and Kim. So Irene, passion or purpose?
Passion.
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Startup or scale up?
Startup.
Dream big or start small?
Oh, that's a good one. Start small.
And visionary or creative?
Creative.
And upskill or outsource?
Upskill.
I like it. We'll come on to you, Helen. Passion or purpose?
Both.
There's been a few people that have said both. Introvert or extrovert?
Both. There's moments where I need to be introvert, and there's moments I need to be extrovert.
Absolutely. Startup or scale up?
Probably startup.
Dream big or start small?
Both.
Visionary or creative?
Visionary.
And upskill or outsource?
Upskill.
And we'll come on to you, Kim. Passion or purpose?
Purpose.
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert. Though increasingly more introverted as I get older.
Startup or scale up?
Startup.
Dream big or start small?
I have to agree with Helen, go with both. Go hand in hand.
Visionary or creative?
Visionary.
And upskill or outsource?
Of course, upskill.
I love it. I think that we've probably on about 90% of people call themselves a visionary over a creative, which I think is very interesting, but very necessary. Being a creative is great, but I love doing that quick fire round just to see what is the similarities and the differences between the different groups. Yeah. Okay, so we have come to the end of our group interview. Thank you all so much for being a part of this bigger vision that I had, and also for your time today. And so for the viewers, if you want to find out more about these lovely ladies that we have interviewed today, or to watch any of our other group interviews, head on over to houseofedenstudio.com.au, and you'll find all the show notes as well, with all the links that we have discussed today.